All right, do that before I forget it. Always hit record.
I hate when I forget to record. I'm like, we just had a whole conversation we're gonna have to do again.
I think this particular podcast I've only managed that once where I was like in the middle of the trivia or something and it's not recording. But that
We
that that
did all that for no reason.
that was just yeah, I think that was only 5 minutes of oh crap, we have to do it again. So it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. But
No.
the only time I totally didn't get the podcast was I've only done it twice, but it was like with the same person. So they probably think I hate them or something. I'm like, no, I am just an idiot. You helped me learn. That's what your job was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and jump on into this. The other thing is I eventually have to go work, and I was like, I didn't get quite ready because I didn't want to roll out of the bed. So that's
Yeah.
why I still look like a scruffy guy who just rolled out of bed.
Yeah.
You gotta for your different looks here and there. So
You can get away with it easier than I could. So
yeah, that's true.
my
And
hair would be like,
we still have to like mask at work and stuff. So shaving has become like a twice a week thing now. It's like I just can't be bothered, you know. So yeah, it's just
yeah.
got
Why
to do
bother if
that.
you don't have to?
Yeah.
Oh God, you still have to mask. That would drive me insane.
Well, the thing in Japan is, I was just reading the news this morning. It's like it's not clear when people will stop because a lot of people like it, and it not even like a virus protection thing that they kind of like being more anonymous and hiding, in plain sight sort of thing. That's like, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be good for kids' psychology
No.
because
Or anyone's psychology, really.
well, anyone's yeah, like I was teaching
Yeah.
we did the parent observations. They usually come to the school. We're not going that cray, but but we were doing Zoom lessons for parent observations. So, the mom could kind of watch from back in the living room or whatever. And some kids are doing the at-home lessons wearing masks, like, huh? And in that case, obviously it's because they don't want to be seen. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's intense. Well,
so
even when I went to China, which I know is different from Japan, but I just feel like they're at least more similar. In 2008, like a lot of people wore masks. And I was like, this is
yes.
really weird. What's happening? And it was like, oh, anytime anyone's sick, they just wear a mask. And I was like, oh, okay. That kind of makes sense, I guess. You're just being polite and you're not spraying your spittle everywhere when you're coughing or sneezing or whatever. But so I can see how it would be like it'd be easier to like keep their these people
Mm.
are already kind of into it in some way. Whereas here it was like no one ever wore a mask, even if they were sick.
Yeah, so it's not it's barely, I mean, I don't think most people think it really does anything about, virus protection these days. It's not a politics thing, it's just everyone's used to it and they kind of like hiding now. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
I
just
will
psychological.
I will say at work because sometimes if someone asks me to do something like suddenly, like I have like I'll make a face like almost unconsciously and nobody sees the face anymore. So,
Yeah.
it's a
You have
plus.
to be less aware of your micro gestures or whatever.
Exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
everyone says because it just takes me a second. Like, oh yeah, I need to do that. I just maybe I'm a selfish bastard, but there's just a second of like, oh god.
Yeah.
And then usually I'm fine with it, but yeah, I just need that second. I used to need a lot more in a second to adapt, so I think that's progress.
Yeah. Growing.
Yeah. Okay, let me just scroll down on my trivia and we'll start. Oh, here we go. Okay, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's the podcast where we look into episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here. Joining me today, coming back, is Lindsey Scharmyn from the Rogue Ways podcast. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me back again.
Good evening to you. Yes. Oh man, I'm just noticing you have like a very nice mic.
Yeah, it's like extra fancy. And even then, sometimes things don't go well. So you
Yeah,
never
I'm
know.
still stuck holding my mic and hoping I don't crackle it. So
Well, see, I'm lucky. I moved in with a musician, so he has like tons of mics, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's my old one. You can have it." And I'm like, "This is a really nice mic," but for him, it's like almost nothing. So it's just the
I'm
benefits of dating a musician.
I'm a musician, and for some reason, this is my only mic.
Like, I guess things are different for some people.
Well, mostly plug everything directly in. The only thing I use the mic for is like, well, I actually, I've been using an iPad for most of my music recording. So yeah,
Wow.
you
They're good
can.
for everything.
They are, yeah. That's talk about twilight zones of the mind. Yeah, I mean that's just modified everyone's mental realities.
For real. Well, my boyfriend's also an artist, and he uses his iPad. He used to hate digital art, and he was like, ugh. And he had like a Wacom, I want to say, or wait, maybe some people listening will know what I'm talking about. It was like the pre-iPad like tablet sort of for drawing, and it was horrible. It was awful. But the iPad is like so smooth. Everything's perfect. It's like very user friendly. It has all these different capabilities, and he loves it now. So he makes all this digital art, and he still does painting, he still does the other the 3D stuff, but iPads apparently can do anything.
Yeah, yeah. I just recently got into the I did the 1 week trial for the AI art. I was like, I don't need this. One, it's too addictive. I was like, the 1 week trial was like, man, I'll just be playing with this forever, and I don't think I actually want to do that. But it was definitely fun for a week, and the podcast art for this now comes from those little experiments. But it
Oh,
was
wow.
fun in that I mean it's AI of course, but there is a fair amount of your own creativity like to interface, and you quickly start to see the limits as well. Like the AI is always going to give you this kind of thing, so that was kind of an interesting way of interfacing with the machine, I guess, and seeing its limits, and but at the same time kind of working with it more than usual.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as that grows to see how it adapts to us and we adapt to it.
Yeah. And today we're looking at a much older kind of phone, a toy phone even, although it does seem to have capabilities that my iPhone does not have. So we'll get into that. It's a long distance call. And if you don't mind, I'll just do a bit of the trivia for this episode.
Yes.
Let's see. The original air date here was March 31st, 1961. The script was credited to Charles Beaumont and Bill Idelson. This was a bit of a point of contention, though, as Maxwell Sanford had contributed an awfully similar spec script called Party Line. Legal actions were taken, and some syndicated versions of this episode actually do change the credit to Sanford. James Sheldon directed, and he had experience on half of the iconic shows of the 60s and 70s, including The Love Boat, MASH, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. He's listed fourth in the credits, but pop culture gives this episode to Bill Mumy in the role of Billy Bales. He was a child actor extraordinaire at the time, appearing in season three's It's a Good Life, multiple episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and 3 seasons of Lost in Space as Danger, Will Robinson. Danger is in parentheses just for the punctuation freaks. Fortunately, it seems he grew up fine and later has genre roles on Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine, and returning to that good life in the Twilight Zone for the early 2000s iteration. Daddy Chris Bales was played by Philip Abbott. He's best known as Arthur Ward on the 60s series The FBI, though he will be back in the zone for The Parallel in season 4. Patricia Smith is our mommy, Sylvia Bales. She had a host of guest star roles before snagging a recurring one in the first season of the Bob Newhart show. And as I'm an ardent Trekkie, I have to note that she'd later appear in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Unnatural Selection. Finally, our granny is played by Lily Darvis. While she had a long stage and screen career, her biggest accolades would actually happen a full decade after this show. She was nominated for a Tony in 1971's Les Blancs and won a special award at the Cannes Film Festival for the movie Love that same year. She's only 58 in this episode. She's not like that decrepit.
Yeah. I was like looking at her and I'm like, why is she die? She doesn't even have wrinkles. Like,
Yeah. So but that is the thing where I guess people, they say people used to look older. A big part of that just being like if you took her in this episode, simply changed her hairstyle and gave her a less frumpy dress, she would probably look more like someone in their late 50s now. It's
yeah, true.
probably a little bit of other stuff as well, but that's a biggie in there. So
Yeah,
Lindsay,
just different styles.
I am going to throw on the prologue for you if you wouldn't mind giving us that. There it is.
Yes. Ah, as must be obvious, this is a house hovered over by Mr. Death, an omnipresent player to the third and final act of every life. And it's been said, and probably rightfully so, that what follows this life is one of the unfathomable mysteries, an area of darkness which we, the living, reserve for the dead, or so it is said. For in a moment, a child will try to cross that bridge which separates light and shadow, and of course, he must take the only known route, that indistinct highway through the region we call the Twilight Zone.
Oh, right. 3 acts to life. That seems rather arbitrary.
Yeah. Young, not young, and dead.
Yeah, yeah, really, or dying, I guess. A dead
Dying.
would be the final curtain in that case. I've heard the concept of basically 7 year cycles to people's lives, which looking back seems about right, roughly. Um, I think I don't know where that concept comes from. It comes from somewhere, but yeah, to me, I'm like that makes more sense. Shakespeare, he has 5 act plays, right? So yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
calling a life in 3 acts. Maybe that's the Sphinx riddle, where
Yeah. Or that walking, what is it? You come in, what comes in on 4 legs, something two
yes,
and then three. I don't
through
know.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
that
talking
that that
about.
it's those three. Oh no, Norton, I don't want to reboot my computer right now. Okay.
Are you sure? Because right now is a really great time.
Yeah, it's like
um
remind me as far later as possible when I'm doing an air podcast or something. Yeah.
it's never actually when you would like it to be. Yeah, I don't know. I always just think of my life in decades, like 0 to 10 is like kind of all one little chunk, and then 10 to 20, and 20 is like each decade seems like its own flavor to me. So how many acts maybe is how many decades do you end up living?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But yeah, just for me, the 7 year thing I thought was I think that even might tie in with like yeah, sorry, I wish I knew the
It's
source. I just like the idea, and looking back in my life, I'm like, hey, 7 years actually makes a lot more sense than 10 years.
It is. It's well, there's one of the planets, and I want to say it's Venus, but that might actually be five. But one of them has a 7 year, cycle around the sun, and so I think that's part of it. But really, physically, it's all of our cells regenerate within a 7 year period, so that might be part of it too, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's great. Astrology and
and
science. You can choose.
and and there's some neuroscience too, but it's just the first 7 years. But I mean, maybe there's something to it that recycles every 7 years. I don't know, but I know your first 7 years of life, you're in a more of the and I forget which, if it's like alpha or beta or theta, or you know what it is, but one of your brain state is closer to I want to say like almost like being in a trance,
Yeah, I think
and then
theta
after
is
seven.
deep sleep. Delta is maybe dream time, and alpha is waking time, I think.
So I think you don't really have like stable alpha signatures until after 7. It's around 7 is when it switches, which is also when you tend to have lost your baby teeth. So we do have sort of a basis of 7 at the earliest part of our life, perhaps.
Yeah, plus another 7, you're hitting adolescence. Plus another 7, that's when your brain is kind of stopping. So,
Starting, yeah.
of course, Billy in this episode is 5, so he's in the first act, no matter what way you want to look at it.
Right. Yeah, and he's
um,
not creepy at all until later. He seems pretty cool and normal at the beginning, and that
well,
changes at some
well,
point.
that gets weaponized in his episode next season, which is probably the better known of the two he's in with It's Good Life. But yeah, where he's full on creepy, but
uh,
but then you get Lost in
yeah.
Space, where he's supposed to be charming for 3 seasons. So
He gets his redemption.
I was thinking, are there any other like child actors from the '60s that really had that much of a footprint? I can't think of one off the top of my head. So
Was Ron Howard in the 60s, or was that a different decade?
uh, he was on, yeah, he was on the Andy Griffith
Was
show
that
in
the
the
50s?
'60s, but I feel like he's
Oh, okay.
better known for Happy Days in the '70s, and of course then he's got his directing career. So yeah, you're not wrong. I'm just kind of like I
This
guess
kid
I'm
is
looking at the
like,
Haley Joel Osment sort of space,
yeah, he's
because he
he's the real
like
star.
yeah, like Haley Joel Osment, he kind of tapered off after being a kid, but occasionally shows up in things, I guess, to let you know he's not dead or rotting in a apartment somewhere.
It's so weird sometimes because sometimes kids are so cute. I'm going to be really judgmental and rude here. Sometimes they're great and you love them, and then they grow up and you see them and you're like, oh God, like what happened to you? And this really, with every single kid in Stranger Things, I was just like, oh my God, every single one of you turned out like horrifying looking. Like, like I think they chose them because they kind of looked like they're not your like standard, cute or handsome child or whatever, but then those quirks and oddities sort of in their features just like got exacerbated as they grew up. And man, I just can't watch Stranger Things after the first season or so because they started to look too weird. I'm like, I don't like this.
I maybe I think I stopped in the middle of the first season. It just didn't grab me completely, but I do want to see some of the season 3 because they filmed it, a bunch of it, like in the mall I used to hang out in at that age.
Wow.
So I'm like,
really?
kind of, yeah, that is my mall. I think they recreated an arcade or something for it. I'm like, I played in the real arcade.
Wow. That's actually so cool. You get to like relive some of that.
Well, I'm from Atlanta. They film everything in Atlanta now. I was looking at Cobra Kai and they're running out of a theater. I'm like, man, that looks a whole lot like the theater I used to go to in high school. But they filmed this in LA and it was like, no, with season 2 they started filming in Atlanta. I'm like, oh, okay. So
that is funny.
The TV show Atlanta
breaks.
Yeah, that's exactly why. The TV show Atlanta was fun because they were showing like like kind of the seedier parts of town, but I'd been to a lot of them. So
hey, that's also where I used to hang out.
yeah, exactly. Because usually they just show the, the big name places, right? Not like the weird back lots of town, so to say. Now,
right, yeah.
Grandma is full on creepy in this episode, I guess.
Well, at the beginning, I also didn't really feel like she was creepy. At the beginning, I was actually kind of really disturbed by how much the mom seemed to hate the grandma. Like, I was like, what's her problem? Like, she's like, really, all she's doing is showing up to her grandson's birthday and like wanting to give him a gift and like hugging him and holding him. And the mom just seems so annoyed that she even exists or that like they have a good relationship. And I don't, there's a moment where she like calls Billy away from opening his other presents to open her present. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a dick move, I guess. Like you can let it kind of be, more in the flow. Like maybe she's being a little bit too attention whoring, but oh my God, I just did not, I was really uncomfortable with that. I was like, why are they treating her so badly? She's his grandma. Like let him have a good relationship with her. But later, not to spoil anything, but later the mom specifically says like their relationship was unnaturally close. And I was like, did it seem unnaturally close to you before she said that? Is that how things were back then? Because I was really close to my grandparents and that wouldn't have been weird for me to be excited to see them and sit on their lap and, hang out with them.
I had the impression she lives there as her health is failing. So maybe if it's this much every day,
all the time, true,
start to get a little grating. And then the second time I watched it, because the actor was it Lily Darvish, she was Hungarian, right? So she's got kind of that stereotypical quote unquote like vampire accent. One of my first notes was, oh, I wonder if her husband was Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, that was weird because I'm like, well, they clearly don't have an accent, but she does. So
yeah, okay, Sunny should have one, right? So
yeah.
I mean,
and then
go ahead.
Well, she's then like clearly sick. You can tell that from the beginning as well. And so I was also like, well, let him have connection with her. She's gonna die soon, seemingly. So let it go. But there was that annoyance. And then when she was saying, well, I won't be here forever. Billy and the dad was like, oh no, you'll be here forever. And I couldn't tell if it was like he's just saying that for him because it's his mom and he's like, no, I'm not going to accept that, or if he's like, let's hide death from Billy, which later becomes obvious they were trying to hide death from Billy, which again, was that just more something people did at that time? Because before that time we didn't hide death at all. Now we still pretty much kind of push death under there. We're like, nope, no one dies, don't look at the body, don't have a wake, just cremate and dump it somewhere or whatever. We also have a very strange relationship with death now. So maybe it was already sort of getting to that stage at this point in this, our culture collectively that you don't talk to children about death and you hide death. And when grandparents die, you just say they went on a really long vacation and you'll never see them again, which I think is weirder. Now you just feel abandoned instead of, understanding death. But they definitely, I couldn't tell for sure like which it was. Why don't you want Billy to know that she's gonna die?
That's kind of like the the more intense version of, oh, the dog now lives in the country house or whatever,
Yeah.
the farm, which honestly I never heard that when I was a kid. I don't think I heard that explanation until I was like in my 20s, told as a joke. But
Yeah.
my family, we did have like a rabbit when I was like 5 or 6, and the dog next door scared it and gave it a heart attack, and my parents were just like, oh, it just hopped away.
It's just gone now.
So then we got another one, right? And there was a storm, and they told me that one did just hop away, and I never heard anything different. But I think in that case, maybe I don't know, or the dog scared it again. So
Yeah, it just keeps happening. Well, I grew up on a farm, somewhat. It was a pretty chaotic farm, but we had a lot of animals, and so I saw a lot of death. It was never hidden from me. It was just like, yeah, things die. Like I found my dog dead. I accidentally killed my guinea pig. Um, but I thought I understood what death was. But that I didn't actually. Once I actually saw our dog's body being put in the ground, we had dug the hole for him and everything, and he was going in the ground, and the dirt started going on top of him. Then I like lost it. I was like, what are you doing to him? How is he going to get out of there? And they're like, no, like that's what we've been trying to tell you. Like this is what death is. And so it was really, I from a pretty young age, it was definitely a part of my life. But I see it all the time. Like a lot of people don't want their kids to know. They'll tell them they hopped away or they went to the farm, or grandma's always going to be here, don't worry about that. And it's interesting.
the sorry, the punchline to that whole story though is 10 years later, when I was 15 or 16, it had been family friends that gave us the first rabbit, and then they actually moved to Europe for several years and came back, and we're having dinner. And I'm 15 or 16 now, and the mother of that family is asking my mom, "Oh, whatever happened to the rabbit we gave you?" And she was like, "Oh, the dog next door gave it a heart attack and it died." And I was like, "What?"
What? You never told me.
Yeah, that's how I learned about it. Just came up in casual conversation, so that was kind of fun.
You were betrayed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's pretty hysterical. I do live in a generational house now, so I that aspect of this did ring a little true. Although my wife's parents, they're still pretty hardy, and they go farm and stuff most days. So
Wow.
they're
Yeah.
they're but that the previous generation, I do remember one of the older ones kind of in this situation for a few years, so like living in the house and being like not in the best of health.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing about my child. My grandma lived with us for a long time while she was, slowly sort of declining. So I also got to understand like aging and, what can go with that. But I take it your parents or your parents-in-law aren't giving any trans-dimensional telephones to your child.
No, 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 they just helped my daughter get kendo gear, right? Little different. But
Yeah, I feel like now when there's like anger or resentment between the parents and the grandparents of a child, it's more like, why do you spoil them so much? And why do you give them so much sugar? And can't you just like have some boundaries here? Unlike this household in the show where they're like, there's genuine like animosity between the grandma and the mom. The mom's like, ah, it's unnatural, it's not right. And the grandma's like, oh, you, because later she even says, my son was taken from me by a woman. I'm like, dang. Like
I
passive
wonder
aggressive much.
I wonder if she's kind of been in the caregiver role for an extended period of time. That might be part of it.
That
Um,
would wear on you.
there's this really, in the past few years in Japan, there's been all these just like disturbing stories. It's like 56-year-old man, like, kills his parents, or, like this guy's just had his like dead father in his apartment for like a year, because we have a lot of this. While healthcare is nice in some ways, and that like everyone's covered basically, like there's so many older people in Japan, there are people like falling through the cracks now, and upper middle-aged people having to take care of like really elderly relatives, and there's like there's a certain amount of neglect, and totally just disturbing things happen, people pushing
Yeah.
wheelchairs into canals and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we don't have the setup anymore. We don't have the society anymore where that could be easier perhaps to deal with, like back in the day you only needed one person bringing in sort of some wages, or you lived on a farm and mostly one or a couple of people, like some children, were helping with the farm, and so there was always someone who had more time and who could maybe take care of people a little bit more. And that's not how we're set up anymore. Everybody has to work. Everybody has a job or school or something. And so who can take care of anybody? Nobody can. So it's like way too much pressure to do that. God, I can't imagine. How horrible.
I mean, that's where I don't really mind living in a house with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, there is kind of the farm is like an escape valve, just if it does start to feel a little crowded. I don't think we step on each other's toes much. Maybe I'm the guy making everyone else angry. I don't know, but from my perspective,
everything's fine.
well,
it also made me wonder, because I feel like there's always supposedly there's always this animosity between like the mother-in-law and the wife, and it's always like, and maybe that's what it is. Like my son was taken from me by a woman. There's always this feeling or something like you're not good enough for him, or like he used to rely on me more and then you showed up and now he doesn't even care about me or something, like a jealousy, which I don't really feel, but I did have a relationship once where I did experience that. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, I'm not taking him from you. He's going to be your son forever. I'm just, a person in his life. Also, we can both be in his life, but maybe this is a really common, really traditional, like, thing that just occurs. It's the way the relationship tends to go. So it's jealousy.
Yeah, but it's interestingly baked into this episode because it doesn't have to be there. I mean, it would have worked. The episode would have worked fine without that. But I don't know. I think that's reasonable writing, I guess.
Maybe it's more relatable.
so eventually, Papa does have to be very direct with Billy about death and gives him a talk. How did that one come across to you?
I guess it's interesting because he's like, well, do you even know what death is, basically? And Billy was like, yeah. And I kind of feel like that's how kids are if we're just like honest with them, they're like, yeah, I get it. Like, why would we need to hide this from him anyways? But that was also the moment where I think, isn't that when he sort of realized something was weird? Because wasn't he sort of hinting at that point that like maybe his grandma like told him, or like he understood, through the phone or something? Like, I don't think he fully got what was going on yet, but I feel like he started to understand like something might be kind of weird here with Billy. How did Billy just take that so easily? Like,
yeah, we're not quite sure. We're not quite sure what Grandma whispered to him, which also a fun little plot device.
Yeah, I forgot about that actually. What did she whisper, or what did he wish for?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they both whisper, don't they? So,
yeah.
Let's look at trans-dimensional Granny then. And I was just wondering what observations you had on our phone situation.
Well, it's interesting to use the phone. I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of folklore might be the right word. I don't know, but urban myths, maybe, or legends too, or just stories of people who say they receive phone calls from people who have died. And it's interesting because they also sort of share the same sort of qualities. Like they sound really distant and far away and like tinny and just kind of like it sounds like them, but not like them. And it's oftentimes people don't even really understand what they're saying, but they like know it's them. And who knows, like maybe people are just getting wrong numbers or like weird connections and they're just like projecting onto it because they want to talk to that person so bad. But Billy seemed to understand very clearly everything that Grandma was saying through the trans-dimensional telephone. And I kept thinking, there's no kid in the world who would play with one toy so consistently and so frequently. Like that felt sort of like nefarious, right? This is where I started getting like, okay, what is she actually doing to him with this phone? Because that's not natural. And we get sort of also another creepy moment when he's just standing there silently, like staring at the pond. I think this is right after she died or something, maybe even before we knew how much he was using the telephone that she had given him. He's just standing there silently and just staring, like head down, like just very. The mom's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Watching the fish." And you're like, I don't think that's what he was doing. It felt pretty weird.
Well, not to sound like an old fart, but kids these days do spend an awful lot of time with the phone.
True. Yeah.
Just if you want to call it a toy, then they're spending about as much time with it as Billy is.
God, and hopefully it's not trans-dimensional and letting some weird stuff through from the other side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Like, who
who knows?
programmed this phone?
Who knows what's behind the digital wall?
For real.
Yeah. Again, that's where like kind of the AI art I was talking about at the beginning was weirdly addictive, and I had fun doing
Yeah.
it. Was like, I'm definitely not going to pay to keep this because, but it was kind of like, like having some kind of consciousness from the other side. This was a digital
Yeah.
one. I mean, there's making music, making art where you're also kind of communicating with something else, but I guess it's, more like organic, right? So, but when you're doing the AI art, there is a weird feel of I'm interfacing like mentally with something digital. So,
Yeah, the music and the art is kind of like, here's this blank canvas. What are you going to do with it? But that stuff you're talking about is more like this interaction. Yeah, like going back and forth. Something is being um reciprocated,
right. Because
which makes it a little bit creepy.
I don't know if you've used any of these, but you'll maybe type a sentence of kind of what you want to see, choose the style to give you like four options. Which one's closest? You choose that, and it'll keep refining it, and then you can go and use all the photo tools and stuff. So,
Yeah. No, I used Midjourney, which is a little different. You don't get to choose styles or anything. I mean, unless a style is one of the words you use, maybe then, but otherwise you just kind of put in whatever words and it pops out something based on those words. The thing that creeped me out about Midjourney, which like I said, is a little bit different, but it's basically the same. You're popping in some sort of input and it's giving you back this art. Is that all of the people that it rendered have red eyes? And I don't understand why. I've never said red eyes. No one else is saying red eyes, because Midjourney too, you can go in and see what everyone else is doing. They have all these different, it's on Discord basically. And so you can see other people's creations and they all have red eyes. And the only ones that don't have red eyes are ones that are like real people. Like if you put Bill Clinton, he might not have red eyes. But if you just do like woman, holding a baby, like they'd have red eyes. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just that day the AI was just using red eyes. I don't know. But every single thing I saw the few days I was looking was all the red eyed stuff. And I was like, that's creeping me out. Like, I don't ever want to come back here again just because of that one detail.
well, I was using a different one, a photo stream or something. Honestly, I've already forgot the name of it. Sorry. But I was like not wanting to get people's faces in the image. One, because I'm like, who is this? I think I've heard a few things about like uh people actually like potential lawsuits of artists being like, hey, you're using my elements for this or something. So there are pieces of the real world being used in it. But like the podcast art I made for this podcast, the one, I wanted it to have the Rod Serling vibe, and you're not going to get that with the AI. So it's like, oh, it needs to be businessman with his back turned. So that's what I got here. As a joke, so there was a meme of the character Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager just pointing a finger and looking very like, don't mess with me, right? And people were making a meme out of it. So I decided to describe it to the AI during the week I had it. And what came back was like clearly influenced, but it was like a complete abomination. And that's the one where it did have forward facing, but I don't think he had red eyes. So maybe it was the particular program you were on.
Maybe. Or maybe,
So,
yeah. Very
now,
creepy.
both of us we had fun, I think, but we were also slightly creeped out by the interaction, or just it's on the unknown. So Billy is totally into this.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a modicum. I mean, he's willing to kill himself because he likes his grandma and his toys so much, and maybe because he's so young, he doesn't have that balance of experience. Like mom says, he's barely been out of the house, which was kind of a weird statement, but
yeah, that was kind of weird.
where's that dad that said that? Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't done this. He hasn't had a girlfriend. He's always like, whoa, where are you gonna go with this guy? We get it. He's young. He hasn't lived a lot. But yeah, I was like, how it does make sense if you don't really understand death fully and you don't really understand life fully and you just want to see your grandma and she's now influencing you more than anyone because you've been on this phone for 24 hours a day. I mean, he's even talking to it in the middle of the night, which again, this is when it gets like even creepier. But yeah, go run in front of a car and okay. I mean, at the very least that's going to hurt, even if you're a 5-year-old kid. So he's willing to go through this pain just to satisfy her desire. And he says that she misses him. She's lonely there. And then it just starts to make me wonder too, well, where is she? I mean, did she go to hell? Did she go to what's the in-between place supposedly?
I can't remember
what it's called. Yeah, I guess so. The Twilight Zone. And she's just, I don't know, because I'm like, wherever you go, if we go somewhere after death, it would seem like there'd be other people there, other beings there, other people who had passed, or angels or something, right? Or demons, I don't know, something. But no, she's very lonely and she wants him to come there. But then if there's no one else there and he dies, who's to guarantee he would even come there anyway? Because you're all alone, right? Where's all the other people? But I guess that's not probably what they meant. They just meant she's lonely for people who she actually knows and loves, and she's just very selfish and wants him to die so that she can hang out with him again, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like let's assume she had a certain amount of dementia. I mean, and was being maybe Billy hadn't gotten out of the house much because mom was busy caregiving, and that would give her a bit of animosity on both sides. But it seems like she's still somewhat out of her mind on the other side.
Yeah, like she's not quite well. And the dad said it really well later. If you really loved him this much, then why would you want him to die if he's 5 years old? It's not love.
I've heard people talking about between the between life experiences of you can go for that stuff or not, but with your soul family and people souls meeting in the beyond and be like, you killed me, that's hysterical, because nothing in life matters once life is over. That sort of thing.
Why would it matter?
So I guess it's weird that she continued her mindset into the great beyond. So that makes it more of, I guess, the Twilight Zone again.
Yeah.
3 a.m. That's when the shenanigans happen, of course. So
of course.
3 a.m.'s, and I think I hear 3:30 as being like the prime time for lucid dreaming. So close to that.
Yeah, it's the witching hour, right? Everybody, though, I always wonder too, is it just because everybody's gone into that, everybody in your region, at least wherever you are in the world, has mostly gone into that state, that level of consciousness, and so it's just like super heightened that you can more easily kind of get into other states. I don't know. But that we were watching it, I was watching it with my boyfriend, and he was like, that's a mother's instinct, because she just wakes up and she just like all of a sudden is listening, and she's like, what is that? And I don't know, maybe his laughter woke her up, but I imagine like he's laughed in the night before, other things happened, but she just knew like something was wrong. And it's true, I swear to God, mothers always know, they always know, and they just wake up and they are right with it. So she did have that mother's intuition seemingly.
And I do love that she hears the voice, but the audience does not. That is a really nice creepy touch.
That is creepy. Yeah, and she never tells him. I mean, maybe eventually they'll talk about this and we're not going to be there to see it, but she doesn't have time to tell him, because as soon as she hears it and she starts like losing her mind, she starts understanding what's been happening this whole time, and he comes in and is like, oh my God, what's wrong? He just like Billy just darts out behind them. Like he's like on it. He's like, now's my chance. And we were kind of laughing because he jumps down, I guess, into that pond again. By the time they get down the stairs and find him, I mean, he's only gone out of the door like 4 seconds before they realize he's gone. And somehow he's dead already. That is a quick drowning.
That I also thought that. I was like, did they just stand at the edge of the pond for like 5 minutes or something?
Yeah. We're supposed to think that if your face touches water, you die. Like he's just like, oh, he's gone.
Yeah, because the new Avatar just came out, and what the big press bump is, Kate Winslet held her breath for 7 minutes.
What, is that even possible?
I did hear an explanation that it was not that they filmed her underwater for 7 minutes. It's like when they were practicing the free diving, they're just like, how long can we do that? And so she's just literally has her face in water, not doing anything.
Still,
but they
7
would,
minutes is a long time.
Yeah, they'd go for 2.5 minute takes of them underwater for the movie apparently. So they
I've heard of like 2 minutes. I thought 4 minutes was like an Olympic record type, like, and going beyond that would be crazy, but maybe I don't understand. Maybe
would
it's
you do you
seven.
want to know the free diving record?
Yes.
Just 24 minutes.
No.
I mean, this is an expert
What?
free diver who, well, I mean, you got Tibetan monks with wild skills, so you have someone that
That's
focuses
true.
that hard on free diving. That's I think it's in the Mediterranean or whatever. They have people that just are serious about it. They have to go quite deep to get their yield. So they really 24 minutes being obviously the like outlier extreme, but
Right. Still.
an experienced free diver, I guess a 10-minute dive is not out of the question. So
That makes so much sense. I lived in Bahrain for a while and they would talk about these kids who would go dive down and collect water from the underwater springs. This is the only way they could get fresh water, actually. There's no freshwater springs in Bahrain. They're all underwater off the coast of the island. So these children would go down with containers and they'd get fresh water from the springs and bring it back up for people. And I was just like, how they swim down that low with this container and then wait till it gets filled up and then bring it back up, and that whole time they're not breathing. But I guess, like you're saying, this is just something you can train yourself to do. That's insane.
yeah, man, that
Well,
makes it.
Billy could have used those skills because Billy was done in like 5 seconds.
Yes. Of course he was 5 years old. And then yeah, I guess it's another just like we're well, I guess 2023 when this episode's airing, but we're looking at this resuscitation machine and I'm just like, man, that's the most steampunk looking thing ever.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. I was very confused as to what was going on, but I guess that was just a respiration. There's like pumping, and we were joking. We're like, fill him with balloons. That'll bring him back. Like, what is happening here? um, it clearly wasn't working either. That wasn't the trick that brought him back.
No, no, that's got to be putting forth that he doesn't know anything about wearing long pants yet. So
Yes. And then I was thinking, like, that is very interesting. There's this sort of almost universal idea that kids wear shorts and adults wear pants, um, even though it's not always true. But they knew, or I guess they just felt like maybe they had figured it out. But even the dad figured out, and he didn't hear her talking on the phone, and he didn't, as far as we know, he wasn't told by the wife that, that's what was actually happening. But he still knew too. They said, like, she took him. She took him.
well, he's
They
still
knew.
watching his kid get obsessed and go mildly nuts. So
Yeah, true. Yeah.
let's break it down into the regular questions that we do on this show, which I feel like is a little more wide ranging this week. So we'll see where it takes us. The first being who exactly in this is going through the Twilight Zone. I already called out Grandma's, like that's where she ended up, but you don't have to agree with that. But
Yeah. Well, definitely that makes sense. But Billy at least makes a little visit there and then comes back. Hopefully it's not a pet cemetery sort of thing, and he he can be somewhat normal after this. But I feel like the mom and the dad did in a way too, because the mom hurt her, so she at least had that experience. Like her perception would have at least opened a bit to what is happening. They both then saw him die and come back, and the dad like does that whole pleading thing. He picks up the phone and he's just like, please give him back. You said he gave you life. You said you love him, then give him life and show him that love. So he's going into the Twilight Zone at least a little bit by doing that too. So I think they all kind of made a little visit.
yeah, I was thinking the parents are probably, maybe it's because I'm a dad, but I feel like
Mhm.
the parents are went deeper into the Twilight Zone than Billy, because there is a chance that when Billy is 30, he's not going to have a firm memory of this, but his parents will.
Very good point. Yeah, because he also just the trauma of nearly dying or maybe dying and coming back or whatever actually happened to him would possibly wipe out the surrounding memories anyway. And even if he remembers like the phone and whatever, he'd just be like, I don't know, I was just playing a game. I was just talking on my toy
Right.
phone. But yeah, the parents aren't going to forget.
Especially, yeah, mom who heard the voice, which is definitely although like you said, people hearing might be hearing like static and just constructing that into the distant voices of their loved one. So not that this
Although
one had any
this,
static. Yeah.
I was gonna say, this one doesn't even plug in. It's just the shape of a phone.
It might have had like little jingly bells inside though, right?
True.
Yeah. But no, I'm not trying to. I totally dig the idea that she heard the voice properly. So
It's
could have been
pretty
loud and
cool.
clear because Billy wasn't like, speak up again. I can't quite hear you. He could hear her fine. So
Yeah. Yeah, like he's just talking to her completely.
so the second one being, do they deserve their trips into the Twilight Zone? Um,
Is is the Twilight Zone bad?
and
So I'm like, is it a gift or a punishment, or is it kind of neutral
that's
and,
that's
and kind
why
of like what you make of it?
that's why I do put the word deserve in that question,
Yeah,
because
because it's
all
like,
three of those, right?
because I feel like for the grandma it was a punishment, and then I'm like, well, I don't know if she deserved it, because like again, I just saw she really loves her grandson, she really loves her son. I don't know. She seems kind of passive aggressive towards the wife. So like maybe she's not perfect, but like, do you deserve punishment for any of that? I don't know. She doesn't seem that bad, but it does seem like she's punished. It seems like she's alone and she feels, like she needs to kill to have a friend. Um, so yeah, I don't, it seems like not a good experience for her. And same with the mom. When she hears her voice, she doesn't seem to take that very well. Seems like it's going to break her psyche a bit.
Yeah.
you know
Well, that's the thing is, like, I guess grandma's kind of a villain.
yeah, if
You
you
see a old, you see a elderly woman in poor health, and you don't want to be like, this person's kind of terrible, but I mean, she could be obsessed with her grandson and still be somewhat terrible, and what she's doing is pretty terrible. So
it ends up being pretty terrible. Like you're literally committing murder. I mean, in the only way you can, as a disembodied voice.
yeah,
Just
exactly.
by, yeah, encouraging him to die. Billy definitely doesn't deserve any of it. Like he doesn't know anything. He's just a kid.
Yeah.
Like, go run in front of a car. No. So definitely not Billy. And again, I'm very unclear on what the dad even feels about any of it, or except that he really loves his son,
Right.
and his mom.
Obviously, yeah, he gets along with his mom better. But yeah, in a lot of Twilight Zones, it's kind of like it's hard to make a judgment call because you just don't know what these people have done in the past. We
Yeah.
and I like that because you do have to be like, well, what do we get from this episode, and what can we extrapolate behind to these people? And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, grandma is kind of a villain here. And
She's
Billy's
she's the
mom
only
is
possible villain. Yeah.
Billy's mom is probably a little less mentally, I'm not gonna say stable, but I mean she's probably been having like a rough couple of years in general. So I
Yeah, I
imagine.
think whatever animosity exists between mother-in-laws and their daughter-in-laws is got to be wearing her down, even if she wasn't like a caretaker and worn out by that sort of role. There's still tension there. It'll still be rough, especially when you feel like you're always being criticized just for loving your husband and being in his life.
Yeah, because I head canoned a little bit, just where Billy's parents got married, had Billy, and probably a year or two, and okay, living the '50s life, and about a year or two in, maybe got saddled with grandma after a stroke or something, and so the past few years, dad's probably, because it's the we're just coming out of '50s, we'll just assume dad's going to the office and doing his 9 to 5, and mom's just like stuck in this situation where Billy can't get out of the house. She's caretaking, and yeah, I think she's pretty worn down. And at the start, well, she's clearly pretty worn down at the start of this episode. So
Yeah, she's right from the beginning, eye rolling and just like, oh my god, again, like with this shit again. So she's at the end of her rope, I guess. Yeah, I do feel bad for her. I feel bad for the grandma too, because again, I don't know what made her this horribly insane. Because she says so. Remember too, when she's dying, and they say, she lost, or maybe it's after she's dead. But at some point, the dad says, "Well, she lost my two other brothers." So she had two sons that died, and then her remaining son, incorrectly and rudely and whatever, inappropriately, but still, she feels like was taken from her by this woman. Right. And then so at least we understand why she's so kind of fixated on Billy and, you know, deeply connected to him and seemingly okay-ish ways until she's dead and kills him.
I guess again, this could be dementia, this could be selfishness, but yeah, the fact, oh, I lost my son to this woman. Well, here's my you as she calls Billy her son now, right? It's just like she's moved all of her obsessiveness over.
Yeah, like full projection. And just a weird thing to say. You're like, well, now we know you're not quite well. Like, if any of the other things were acceptable, like now we start to see like it's not actually acceptable. And the mom is kind of right when she says, like, you saw how close they were. It was unnatural. I guess it was unnatural. It is kind of possessive and very psychologically unstable.
Because if
It's
not
just,
for the unnatural relationship, grandma might have died. And even if she was able to make that connection, it would probably be a little more benign.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I kept thinking too. Like it's there's people who have contact from beyond. You can be just a nice presence every once in a while that's comforting, or you don't have to make him dead to come be with you. You can just be with him in life, it would seem. But
They got a
maybe
they got
not.
a yeah, they got a party line to go back to the story that the dude said he wrote this first.
Yeah.
It took me
Yeah.
a while
We
to
can
figure out what the party line was, but I finally worked it out.
Yeah, I never actually did a party line, but I remember hearing about like, oh yeah, we can all talk together. And I think we did that, but I don't think we called it a party line. I don't remember what we called it.
We call it a
This is back
three-way
when
call.
phones plugged into the wall. Yeah, maybe it was just called the three-way call.
I
You
wonder if
just
it's
like typed in some code and then dialed them and they could join in.
yeah. Yeah, man, it was such in the vernacular when I was, in junior high, and now I've lost it.
Yeah, me too. So
Speaking of
weird.
forgetting things, like Billy might forget some of this, but no, I just the Kinks have a song in the '60s called "The Party Line," so it gets stuck in my head a lot, and I never thought about what it meant. So,
Yeah, I remember hearing about it.
um, on the tripometer, zero's not trippy, five is very trippy. Where do you want to put this?
I'm gonna go 3.7. No, 4.3. 4.3.
Okay, a nice some pointillism there. That's cool.
Yeah. There's some gray area here.
I
Because
actually, yeah,
it got creepier and creepier as the episode went, and it got more and more like, again, I got like almost Pet Cemetery vibes eventually. I was like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't realize she was so dark. I didn't realize she wanted to murder her grandson. Um and now he's come back. So again, we don't know what happened after that, but I always get kind of like, I don't know, is it going to be bad now? Is he going to always be different? Is he never going to be quite the same? Who knows what's going to go on with little Billy?
are they
She's
gonna
like,
tell him
there's
the
a high
phone
creepy
hopped away?
factor. Yeah, your phone hopped away.
Yeah, I was also sitting here like where exactly do I want to put it? I settled on 4.5 with the
Oh wow.
justification that the scene where mom hears the voice alone is one of I think that's one of the trippiest moments I've come across so far in the Twilight Zone. So if
Yeah,
anyone's wondering like what does Matt think is trippy for the tripometer, that moment is a case in point. So
that one's pretty trippy. Yeah, and I think part of it too is like just how happy and like carefree Billy is while talking to her so clearly and so frequently on this phone. That starts to really like get to me too. I'm like, okay, dude, this is actually is unnatural. They are unnaturally close now for sure if they weren't before.
yeah, because it, like you said, mom sounds a little too judgmental when she says it 1 minute into the episode, but by the end,
Later.
it's kind of again, there might have been plenty of weird Twilight Zone vibes in the previous couple of years with Billy and being a toddler or whatever. So there
True.
might be a little more precedent than we know. Again, that's where she's got like the Hungarian accent going, and I'm like, she's kind of a soul vampire. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to stick a Hungarian accent on that, but we that's blame Bella Lugosi again. So, but the
Yeah, they had to
second
do that on purpose. They're like, we need a really creepy seeming grandma, even if she's loving at the beginning.
right, so the second time I watched it, I definitely was like getting more of like she's kind of a vampire, feeding off of
Ah,
Billy's life energy.
really good point. She is. Have you ever seen What We Do in the Shadows?
I have not.
It's kind of a British comedy humor about vampires, and it's kind of funny. But if you ever watch the TV show version, the movie is worth watching. If you like that kind of humor, you might like the TV show too. It grows on you after a few episodes, because especially if you just watch the movie, it's like not quite as good at first, so you have to get used to it. But it does become very, very good. But they have an energy vampire. Is what I'm getting at. Not just a blood sucking vampire, like someone who's just an energy vampire, and it's so hilarious because we all know those people. And you're right, she was one of them. She's just like sucking the life force from this small child.
Yeah, God, now we're making her from villain to monster. Okay, so
Yeah.
so I
She's
guess
both.
she does deserve this punishment.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
Maybe.
probably why she's not finding anyone on the other side. Like, that is her punishment. They're like, no, you sucked everyone's life in life, so now you have to be completely alone. You don't get to have access to other people's energy.
But yeah, just over the course of this podcast, at first she was just grandma, then she's a villain. Now she's a soul sucking energy vampire.
It's true. I started this conversation like, why are they so mean to grandma? Now I'm like, man, that lady's got issues. You're right. She deserved it.
Do you have any final thoughts on this particular episode?
I just hope Billy can recover. And like you said, he maybe won't remember any of it. And that's probably a good thing.
That would be for the best. And yeah,
Yeah.
and mom and dad are going to be a little shell shocked from this point, at least for a bit, if not
I,
longer.
w- I was thinking they're going to be closer than they ever have been. Maybe they'll even start sleeping in the same bed. You never know.
When does that happen on TV? Late 60s? Brady Bunch? Is that when they finally get the same bed? I think it's Brady
I feel
Bunch.
like, oh, maybe you're right. Not that far off.
Yeah, yeah. So give them another 7, 8 years, I guess. It is 2023 now. I mean, not as we're talking, but as we're airing. And I guess I'm just asking what's up for your 2023. I'm telling you what date it is. It's January 9th today for people listening on day of release. So
Oh wow. Happy New Year to everybody. I was told that this is going to be my year. Things are going to be amazing. I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to be famous or something, which I'm always like, do I even want that? I don't know, but money is cool. Um so we'll see, but then someone else told me I'm a rooster in Chinese astrology, and next year is, I want to say it's it's a tiger year or cat year, and that's the enemy of the rooster. So according to that person, it's going to be my worst year. Who knows? We'll find out. I'll let you guys know in 2024.
I should know what animal it is next year because they've already, they have to send New Year's cards in Japan, and they
Because
all.
I thought, yeah, I
So I've
thought
already
this was the
seen
tiger year.
I've already seen a bunch of displays. So,
So you've
um,
been seeing it.
but I haven't been like filing it in my memory. So, because
Yeah.
my wife was doing the
I
New Year's cards a couple days ago, and I didn't register with, I guess I didn't look that closely.
It's the year of the rabbit. I don't think the rabbit's the enemy of the rooster, is it? So
No,
it
no.
is. This year was the year of the tiger. So if that was true, this would have been my bad year. I had a great year.
Oh,
It was
okay.
fun.
Well, then that's a fair portent for 2023 then.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
And oh yeah, the other part of that was to let people know where they can find your stuff on the
Oh
online.
yes. Yes. If you want more rambling from me, you can go to rogueways.org. And that's all the stuff. All the stuff I do is there, and there's a lot of it. So my shows, the links to the shows, books, shop, all kinds of stuff. You can meet with me one-on-one if you would like some spiritual support. I promise I won't send you to the other side prematurely like the grandma does to the little boy. So you'll be safe.
Okay, that's a good
That's a
good
guarantee.
that's a guarantee. I will not murder you.
I will not murder you. Trust.
As for this Time Enough podcast or Time Enough Pod on Twitter maybe and and Facebook. Um we're under the Patreon umbrella of Podcastius, where you can support us and keep the lights on, or just use that as a hub to find all the podcasts that we do out here. Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary, where we talk about sci-fi movies. There's a bunch of video games with Luke Loves Pokemon. You can guess what that's about. Monster Mash is about Monster Hunter. And there's the Game Show, which is four British guys hurling insults at each other. And I've just started putting out a series it was from an old podcast, but I finally made its new podcast, which is Occult Disney, where we go through all of the Disney animated films, looking for the bizarre history and real magic, behind the mouse, all those hidden Mickeys.
Yeah, that stuff gets crazy.
Okay. So, Lindsey, as always, thanks for jumping in, and we should listen closely and see if we hear any disembodied voices.
Yes, catch some EVPs on here. Thanks for having me, Matt. It's always fun.
There, that's a much nicer ghost.
You'll totally have the best year ever.
All right. Yeah, thanks. That was fun because I was like, yeah, and that like it's always fun to do one of these and then feel completely different about the episode by the time you get to the end.
Yeah, by the time you're at the end, I was like, I hate this woman. Why is she so evil?
That's
I did kind of already, but I felt differently. Yeah. I like that too.
First time I was just like, it's grandma. Second time I watched, I'm like, she feels kind of vampire-y. And then talking over here, I was like, by the end of it, she's a straight up vampire.
Yeah, no wonder the mom was drained.
we answered your question in the end, so it worked out.
Yeah, thanks for putting up for my rescheduling needs as well. Hopefully everyone there is feeling better too.
Yeah. It's slightly disappointing not to do the invaders from the the secluded farmhouse, but
that made me so sad. I was like, that would have been cool. Oh well.
And I was just like, when we were about to start, I was suddenly like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't even like plan it that way. Just like, hey, that's where I am. But I ended up doing the episode with the in person with the guy I work with, and he was happy because he got to talk about the is it the Hopkinsville goblins, the the alien, well, he talks about in the episodes. Yeah, it's basically like, it's when you say alien in America, we think of like the Greys or something, whereas if you say alien in Japan, they'll think of this like Hopkinsville goblin sort of aliens, which is similar situation of a family being like besieged by what could have been animals, but they were like, thinking it's aliens, and there's a whole mythology about that, and so
cool.
Anyway, he was very happy to be able to do that episode. Also, I've been giving him like too many like derpy comedy episodes, so
he wanted a serious one. Yeah.
He wanted to sink his teeth into, so
that one was really cool. That one was, I loved, there was just no dialogue the whole time.
Yeah, although the subtitles,
right? It was like silent.
I watched that one with my family, and it has subtitles. I turn on the subtitles because their first language is Japanese, and my daughter just kept laughing at it because it would say like pants, then pants loudly, and pants in Japan is underwear, not not trousers. So
loud underwear.
Yeah, she thought that was hysterical.
That's funny. My favorite subtitle I've ever seen was describing the music of the scene, and it just said investigatory synth. And we were like, ooh. What? Investigatory synth. Wow. That is a really unique niche for music. Investigatory synth. So, that's fun.
I feel like that seems to me you're investigating the dials and stuff. I know it makes sense.
Yeah, they were like literally investigating. There was synth music, but I was like, is this a genre now?
Oh, I was thinking of investigating the synthesizer. Okay, that's because I'm a gearhead though.
Yeah, see, you can take it so many ways. But yeah, I'm glad everyone's well. I'm glad we got to do the episode, and thanks for making me have fun.
Yeah, even this one, I actually had someone else's name on it, but they were like, I can't do it till after the holiday. So I did a little more swiveling. But yeah, this was a good one. I feel like I haven't had too many episodes where it's like it was a poor fit. So it seems to work out okay most of the time.
It's perfect.
Okay. Anyway, have a groovy Christmas and New Year. And
yeah,
I'll probably get back to bugging you sometime before too long in the new year.
Perfect. All right. Happy Merry Christmas to you guys.
All right.